Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to my fellow residents of Yap City. Welcome back to The Weekly Wigs on this here season finale. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. Cue the party poppers, bring out the confetti. Guys. Hello everyone. Episode 10. We're wrapping up our inaugural season of the Weekly Wigs podcast. What a few weeks it's been. There's a lot to unpack today. We're going to do a bit of a highlight of, honestly, 2025 as a year, not specific to the podcast itself, but just the world, global affairs, politics, pop culture, and just a little look forward to the future, you know. Many topics to be discussed, and I guess I just want to sort of start off the episode by genuinely thanking anyone in these last sort of 2 months that have joined me on this podcast journey as a listener, a viewer. If you've commented, liked, shared, I really, from the bottom of my heart, am very grateful to anyone who shows any form of support to this podcast. It is really difficult doing it all by myself, and I've kind of been through that spiel before, so I won't moan on too much about that, but like, it means more than you can understand when you're independent, doing by yourself, and the community support is what I need. It is more helpful than you know, and I hope it grows as we move forward into the new year. So just a genuine thank you for tuning in week after week if you have been doing so. Maybe you're catching up on episodes in a future tense, and if you are, then hello. Thank you for also joining me at any given time. I feel very bittersweet recording this episode today because I've got a whole plan of things I'm going to go through, but I feel it's a very somber atmosphere today because I woke up and looked at the news, and there's been a really very sad terrorist attack today in Australia on Bondi Beach, and I've just been locked onto the news most of the day because it's just so sad. Not to start off on too much of a negative note here, but it's like, God, this world has been going through it in the last few years, specifically in 2025. And as I go through this breakdown and run through of the highlights and lowlights of this year, you'll probably notice that a lot of world events, some not so great, some better than others, will make appearances. And whenever something like this happens, I feel like it's very easy for us to just say the same lines, you know. We see it so much. I feel like personally, I've become almost desensitized to how frequently normal these terrorist attacks and these incidences are. And it's really quite sad, isn't it? You know, you see the same pictures and scenes, people going to the vigils, people paying tribute, the same press conferences, the Prime Minister's statements, the same messaging of like, you will not scare us. And it's like, it's very sad, isn't it, that this is the life we live now. And I know that sounds like a bit dramatic because it's like conflict and all sorts of awful things go on in the world. Like, we know that happens and has done since the beginning of time, but it is almost like it's just become normalised, even though we know it's not normal. And as someone who is an advocate for peace, world peace, just always have to question, when will it end? But yeah, I guess I just wanted to sort of make note of that today because it feels like a strange vibe recording today. And it also kind of ties into just this time of year when you're wrapping up your year, coming towards Christmas time. For a lot of people, that will be spending time with family and those that are most important to you, and celebrating holidays and celebrating religious holidays. And it's supposed to be this like sacred, holy time for us all to stop, rest and reset. And then it's just quite sad to think that there's going to be families out there that are reaching this time of the year with immense grief or because of somebody's selfish actions. And yeah, I just want to like set that tone there just to sort of start us off that I'm very aware of what's going on in the world. So if I'm talking about things in a light way or making humour of all the madness that's gone on this year, just know that there is genuine empathy and love for my fellow humans underneath it all, you know? And that same notion goes towards any trans person in the UK right now or across the world. You'll see on the video I'm wearing my Protect the Doll shirt right now, which is a symbolic shirt for supporting like trans rights. And this is a bit of a political side tangent, but like, I'm just so mad at what is going on in the UK in particular. I know it isn't just unique to the UK, but last year when I cast my vote for the Labour Party, thrilled and excited for a new big change on the horizon. It was pretty obvious that the Tories were getting the boot. And in came Labour, selling the dream of change, at last, after 13 years of austerity and shit. And they campaigned all their messages, yada, yada, yada. Granted, they weren't the perfect option at the time, but it looked like improvement and change, and that's what I took it on as. And then just the culture wars that have been going on the last few months, particularly around trans rights, is just sickening to see. Just this last week, the Labour Party decided that they would start banning trans women from their conferences. This followed on from iconic institutions and names like Girl Guiding, Women's Institute, the WI, also following suit that they would be banning trans girls from their organisations. And all of this from a stupid court ruling that came out of nowhere, quite frankly, that decided the fate of actually quite a small minority of people and decided to exclude them as a whole. All because the law says that you're not a girl. Honest to God, this is a complete iteration in modern day of what gay people used to go through like in the 1970s and 80s. The complete discrimination that they went through, and here we are in 2025, and we've not learned a thing. It is the same thing, except it's just a different chapter of the book. And you've got Keir Starmer with a spine like a piece of loose spaghetti, who sits there and just nods along. Well, yes, I support the court's decision, a woman's a woman. And now his party's got the nerve to take steps to actually exclude. It's something that I feel quite passionate about. And I think we all should care. I mean, to me, human rights are just human rights. To anyone. I don't care what your race is, your religion, your gender, your sexuality. None of it matters. We're all just human. We all bleed the same. And all of a sudden, just because some radical loonies decide to kick up a fuss, we all must follow in their footsteps. No. Not on my fucking watch. So yeah, the world is going through some troubling times. There's a lot of darkness out there, and a lot of it has happened in this last year, and it's just like, when will we heal as a world? Please, God, let us all heal together. Get rid of these dictators, get rid of the bigotry, get rid of the racists. Honest to God, it's not that difficult to just be nice to your fellow humankind. And so this brings us on to the start of 2025. What I'm going to do is go through month by month. We're going to do a little lowdown of some of the key happenings that happened throughout the year, month by month. And some of that is political, some of that is world news, some of that is pop culture. Some of it's light, some of it's heavy. So let's get into it. So, January 2025, girl, we had a rough start. We had a rough start to the year because January 2025 marked the inauguration and the very sad return of President Donald J. Trump. Oh, I hate even saying his name. I think we can all agree that that was a very sad day in history. And obviously hearing the news earlier the year before that he had won that presidency again, we knew that the inauguration was coming, but I didn't choose to watch it. I only saw pictures and clips on the news, because why on earth would I want to watch that what's it get put in charge? No thank you. But I think that marked a bit of a dark stain on the calendar. The one saving grace and the one moment that did secretly satisfy me when that happened, though, was, in some senses, it made me sad at the same time, but also quite vindicating. Miss Carrie Underwood. Oh my God, Carrie Underwood. Girl, what were you thinking? I have loved Carrie Underwood for so long. She's a country singer. She's really quite a big famous country singer in America. You've probably heard of her. And I went to go see her in concert a few years ago, and me and my mum love listening to country music together when we're in the car, and Carrie Underwood was always one of those artists that cropped up in the playlist, and I've just generally been a fan. So to my absolute horror, when I found out that she was performing at his inauguration, singing, what's the song, America the Great, or whatever they bloody call that song, some patriotic anthem that they have in America, I was devastated. I just thought, I didn't know Carrie Underwood was a Trump supporter. I didn't know that's how she operated. And I mean, to be honest, maybe that was quite naive of me because, let's be real, lots of country stars and people from those southern states in America like Texas and Louisiana and all that kind of stuff, I think they are raging Republicans, aren't they, very sadly? It's a bit of a divide in America where lots of the metropolitan cities like New York and Los Angeles or Chicago, they're often Democrats leaning on the left. And then the southern states tend to be raging Republicans. And some of them, like deep MAGA supporters, like the Make America Great movement. But I just thought, woman to woman, Carrie Underwood, the woman whose hugest hit is Before He Cheats, and she's out here saying, hey, fuck these men, to then go on to support the biggest predator and criminal of our lifetimes was just quite shocking and disappointing. But what wasn't disappointing is when she opened her mouth to sing at that inauguration, it all went horribly wrong for her. Something happened with the mic, the tech went wrong, and no one could hear the girl singing. The track was gone. Something happened, and it was just one of those epic fail moments where I was like, girl, if that wasn't Miss Karma doing her thing, I don't know what was. So, you know, that's what January brought us, was that very dystopian, depressing, but slightly amusing moment. And it's actually probably not a surprise that during that month happened to coincide with my personal ambitions of becoming more involved in protest, in political movements. And January also marked my first appearance at a UK Women's March. I'm going to try and sprinkle a few personal moments throughout this month by month run through of anything potentially significant or interesting that happened to me at the time, or memories that I have. But yeah, January for me, whilst very depressing on the whole, especially in the winter months, I felt so invigorated because of what was going on. Because the thing about Trump being elected, it wasn't just about America, and it never is. It always has a wide-stretching impact on the rest of the globe, as we have all felt in various ways. And in particular, being a woman. And so I think this UK Women's March was very much spurred on by those movements happening in America. And there was a lot of girls with signs that said, dump Trump, no more misogyny, all this kind of stuff, right? And so when I heard that that was going on, I thought, sign me up. I made a sign. It was honestly one of the most wholesome, empowering feelings I think I've ever had. Just being amongst a sea of women and men, not loads, but some, mainly women though, just side by side. We're chanting, we're singing, everyone's made signs, everyone's respectful to each other, there's no violence, it's just a peaceful walk. They had a rally, they had talks. And one thing about coming to Manchester that was always quite exciting for me is knowing that it was the birthplace of a Miss Emmeline Pankhurst, one of our most famous suffragists and historical figures of our time, who did an immense amount of work to help secure the vote for women in the UK. And there was just something very symbolic of marching with all those women, turning a corner into St. Peter's Square, which is one of the main squares in Manchester where they often have protests of all sorts. And there's a statue of Emmeline Pankhurst in that square. And it's just looking over at her, being there with a sign, all these, it was just a really beautiful full circle moment for me. And it often feels empowering because when you're in a bit of a powerless position, when someone like Donald Trump is taking power and sadly taking over the world, it's the small actions that you can do or you are in control of that can make you feel like you're trying to make a difference, you know? So that, in some senses, whilst it was a bit of a scary, sad time, I was glad to have something to counteract that in January. So that was kind of the main highlights for January that I've noted down. So moving on into February 2025, in the political world, following on from Trump's inauguration as president, this is where all the beef began. This is where the tariffs began. The tariff war on the economy, waging economical war. And they also started to wage psychological war onto Canada, their dear neighbours. And shit got real. And it was basically just a big dick off of Trump going, I'm going to put tariffs on you. And then Canada going, well, we're putting tariffs on you. Oh my God, honest to God, men in power, it shouldn't be a thing. Although Justin Trudeau, who was the Canadian Prime Minister back then, what a handsome man. Not to be objectifying, but what a handsome man. He truly has to be the most beautiful, objectively handsome Prime Minister that has ever existed. And now he goes out with Katy Perry. What? Girl, Katy Perry makes an appearance on this list later, so stay tuned on that one. But anyway, that was a tense time in February. Things were really kicking off in the presidency. Things were getting tense between countries that had never been that way before. And I just felt like, oh God, the world's imploding. and I was watching with bated breath. But in order to keep us all sane and to help us with a slight bit of escapism, as entertainers often do in the music world, we all had the pleasure of watching the Kendrick Lamar Super Bowl in February. It was the Philadelphia Eagles versus the Kansas City Chiefs in the Super Bowl final. And this is when the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef was going down in the rap music world. Now, I personally never really took a team. I'm not that invested in American rap beef. I did quite enjoy Drake's diss track called Push-Ups. I thought that was a pretty good one. And then, of course, Kendrick came out with Not Like Us and then kind of shut the whole thing down. So I do remember that being quite an entertaining moment. I do love a Super Bowl halftime show. I'll be honest, I'm not exactly a big Kendrick Lamar fan. I don't really know many of his songs, whereas I am quite a fan of Drake's stuff because he has a lot of mainstream hits that I've probably just heard more over the years. So I'm low-key Team Drake, maybe. Sorry about it. But anyway, they were beefing. Isn't that just the most, it's like the world's literally imploding. There's a dictator in charge of America, and you got these two rappers just beefing it out like little bitches. Like, what the hell? Oh, anyway, that just sums up the state of this world. I do think Kendrick Lamar may have taken the cake, though, when he brought out Serena Williams onto the Super Bowl stage. I think there was a long-standing history or something. I can't even remember what the context was now. Some silly drama around, like, I think Serena might have dated Drake once, or I don't know. And Serena was not Team Drake. So he brought her out on stage. She's doing a dance, and everyone across the globe watched on in shock. And then, of course, he did the Not Like Us song on the Super Bowl in front of millions of people across the world. And Drake was very quiet after that point, is all we'll say. So pop culture beef was going on during February amongst the political beef between Trump and Canada. Things were a bit tetchy, to say the least. And then fast forward into March 2025, sticking on the Canadian Prime Minister topic here, Justin Trudeau was out after 9 years of being the Prime Minister for Canada, which is a very, very long reign, actually. And he was replaced with a Mr. Mark Carney. And I didn't follow along with this too much. I'm not super deep into Canadian politics and what goes on over there. But I do recall this Mark Carney guy kind of coming out guns blazing. And he was not fucking with Trump. He was like, yeah, no, you won't be taking Canada for fools, Mr. Trump. Goodbye. And I think there was some moment where they had like a public meeting in front of cameras and Trump was trying to say something and then Mark Carney like shut him right down there and then. So I was like, okay, slay Mark Carney, I like you. So meanwhile, as that's happening in the politics world, one random significant event that did happen in March, as I was like researching back through 2025 events and trying to remember what happened, I forgot that this was even a thing. In March, we had the Heathrow Airport power outage, which literally caused pandemonium at the airport and it disrupted like 270,000 passengers. I don't think anything of that magnitude had ever happened in terms of like a power outage or disruption to an airport. I guess it was like some sort of electrical power site near the airport. I don't even recall what the cause of it was. Some kind of current wave, something. I don't know, something happened where like it just tripped the power and it was like all power was out. None of the planes could go. Tons of cancellations. And that went on for days, absolutely days. And I also recall this being like a really weird time where there was like a spout of power outages or like IT glitches that were happening across the world, because shortly after this, there was also a massive power outage across like the majority of Spain and Portugal. I'm talking like full blackouts, like no street lights, no electricity anywhere, like across the cities. Like my friend who lives in Barcelona, I remember she had it and she was like, we've got like no power. It's like, so are we living in the Victorian times? Like what has happened? So the world was having a bit of a time around here. From my memory, there were a lot of cyber hacks going on. Oh my god, remember when M&S got a huge cyber attack this year? When did that happen? M&S cyber attack when? Oh my god, see? Yeah, I thought this was right. It was also in April time. So March, April. There was just a lot of things going on. We had the Heathrow Airport power outage, which was pandemonium. The M&S cyber attack happened on Easter weekend in April. And then the Spain power outage and the Portugal outage was also around about April. So I do remember this and thinking, no, I'm sorry, guys. Like, what is actually happening to the world? What do you mean power outages and IT glitches and cyber attacks are happening? I, honest to God, I think I recall at this moment in time, we were like so fresh into the Trump reign. He's waging war on everyone. The tariff thing's going on. He's beefing with Canada and everyone in between. All these cyber attacks and outages were happening. And I think I had a genuine moment in this month where I thought, oh my God, guys, it's going to be like apocalyptic, like pandemonium before we know it. It was a slight panic moment of like, no, because what is actually happening here? This can't be real. So yeah, that was pretty crazy times. And then if we didn't think it could get any more crazier and weirder, April saw us witness the Blue Origin space flight. Oh my God, this has to be one of my standout moments for the year and the most like dystopian Black Mirror shit I have ever seen. So this happened at the start of April the 14th. My God. So Blue Origin is basically this company that is essentially founded or funded by Jeff Bezos, the billionaire from Amazon fame. We don't really like him. We don't like many billionaires in this world because none of them do any good with their money. For some reason, him and Elon Musk, they all just like to waste and flitter money on taking joyrides to space, which is probably no good for the environment, and only for a select few who get to afford it. Honestly, I can't. Meanwhile, there's people starving across the world. So they marketed this thing as like an all-female crew heading to space. And actually, they didn't even technically go to space, right? This whole thing is so stupid. It's basically like a spaceship that like takes you sort of to the edge of space, basically, leaves you up there for a few minutes to float in the gravity and then comes back down. So we're not actually talking like, you know, full NASA orbit into the damn moon, you know? But alas, they really bigged this thing up. They were like, it's going to be the first time an all-female crew goes up to space. First of all, calling them a crew is so insulting to every real-life astronaut that has ever existed on this planet. Like the people who actually train and do this as their full-time professions. Oh, it was such a slap in the face to those people. And they really did put just a random group of women, which included the likes of Lauren Sanchez, who is Jeff Bezos' wife, Gayle King, who is this like random American television presenter who's besties with Oprah. That's the only reason most people know her. And then fucking Katy Perry, global superstar pop star. Oh, the whole thing was so cringe. Katy Perry was probably the most cringe of all of them. She was like singing songs in space and she had a flower floating everywhere. And there was this whole like dramatic performance when they came back down to earth and they're like kissing the ground, and she did the most like out of touch interviews with the press being like, you know, life's just so precious, and like when you stand down from up there it makes you realize like we're so insignificant. Oh my I was screaming when I saw all these things, and it was just so out of touch. And a lot of people, understandably, were not impressed with this entire thing. It got a lot of backlash. I think the PR team at Blue Origin was scrambling, thinking, shit, this didn't go like we thought it would. Because they really thought they ate with that one. I honestly think that they thought they were making a world of difference to the world issues. They thought they were doing something for feminism. They really thought that this was like amazing, which is why they clearly had some high profile people on there as well. And it's just like, no, you just displayed your ignorance to the world and your grotesque amount of wealth that could have probably gone to solving other things. And meanwhile, your stupid husband who runs the whole thing is like a tax dodger and does no good with all his billions of dollars he's got. Meanwhile, his ex-wife is out there donating all the bloody money. And it's just like, that felt like another just a dark moment in the world of like, oh, we really lost the plot. And bear in mind, you got to remember, this was sort of fresh in the time where we also did have Elon Musk, who is the richest man on earth, playing a very significant and ridiculous role in the US government, where he was like brought on board by Donald Trump as this sort of money saver. We're going to slash loads of costs across America in our public bodies. We're going to transform things. No more money wastage. Meanwhile, he's only ever doing things to pocket money for himself. Elon Musk doesn't give a shit about the American people. He's also just blowing all his millions on his hundreds of kids that he has with 10,000 different women and spaceships and SpaceX, his space company. And it's just like, the appetite for billionaires ain't there, bitch. It ain't there. Not that it ever has been, but like, this felt like a really rife time for just rich, stupid people doing stupid things whilst the world is burning around us and Trump's in charge and everyone's just shitting themselves thinking, what is going to happen next? So Blue Origin spaceflight, I think, takes the award for the most ridiculous event of the year, quite frankly. Well, one of. But to balance out the madness from one pop diva to another, the real good in this earth, and this was a significant memory of mine from the month of April, was Gaga-chella. Miss Lady Gaga bringing her wonderful Coachella show. If you don't know, Coachella is like a very big, famous music festival. Happens every year in America, in LA. Very similar to like the Glastonbury of the UK. And they obviously have the big guns performing at those festivals. And it's often available for you to watch on YouTube while it's happening. And I love watching it every year. They always have some really good acts usually. I think this year they're having Justin Bieber on this, so that should be interesting. But last year, obviously, with Miss Gaga coming out with her Mayhem album, full of absolute hits, we had Abracadabra, which definitely Song of the Year if you ask me. She is nominated for a Grammy for Song of the Year. We will find out next year if she wins it. But yeah, Gaga really just came back at a time that we needed her. We needed OG Pop Gaga at her truest form. And she did that. She came and she delivered and she performed what is now known as Gaga-chella. And it was phenomenal. It was Lady Gaga is truly one of the greatest performers of our time. Certainly in my time of who I've seen in concert and watched over the years. And she's just so talented. Like, that woman is an enigma. I think that's pretty undeniable. And if you ever find it online somewhere, it is quite hard to come by because they don't usually publish it on YouTube after it's taken place, but if you find some little link online of the Gaga-chella show, oh girlies, you gotta watch it. It was just like a work of art. The outfits, the dancing, the narrative, the story, the vocal, the whole thing was just captivating. And I think we needed that. We needed a revival and to feel like we weren't all burning to the ground. So thank you, Gaga, for bringing us back to life in April of 2025. So coming on to May now, and this is, I'm noticing as I go along this list, I'm basically including, we've got the balance here, and this is very much feels accurate to what my life is, right? And the interest that I take. You have the balance of political world events and happenings, often quite depressing and scary, balanced out with pop divas and pop culture and concerts and music. And that goes to show to you just how I operate, okay? And how I keep the balance in this life. And actually, honestly, truly, is probably how most of us keep the balance in this life. We're all exposed to obviously all the things that go on in the world. And I think we all seek art, entertainment, music as like a form of escape and a form of feeling positive where we can. So yeah, sorry, I'm cracking up because I'm noticing as each thing I've gone down has been like, politics versus pop culture. Who's going to win? And yeah, so May is no different. In the world of politics and world events, we saw the Pope died this year in May. Very sadly, Pope Francis, I think his name was. Forgive me, I'm not really, I'm not on my Pope knowledge. I'm not religious. I don't really follow any Pope things, if that's even a sentence. Obviously, we know the Pope exists, but I guess in my mind, I'm just like, well, all these popes are just old men, and it's just the same cycle over again, isn't it? They all last a few years, and then the cycle continues. But I do think I was reading up, actually. Apparently, this Pope Francis, I think he was a pretty good pope. I think he was a pretty revolutionary, modern pope in that he actually openly was very supportive of gay rights, which is, historically quite rare to come by in the world of religion sometimes. But Yeah, I think he was pretty well respected and loved, Mr. Pope Francis. And he had been the Pope actually for quite a long time. So he had been the head of the Catholic Church and the sovereign of Vatican City from the 13th of March 2013 until his death in 2025. So, yeah, that was a pretty big news story. And the kind of comical moment, which we will stick with this line, is that basically J.D. Vance caused his death. J.D. Vance, the very, very disgusting, despicable Vice President of the United States, Donald Trump's right-hand man. It felt like a slight coincidence that he rocked up and met Pope Francis, had a gathering with him, and then all of a few days later, the man died. Everyone felt slightly suspicious. What did you do, J.D. Vance? What did you do to Pope Francis, the poor man? And then it was quite comical because obviously, you know, fast forward a few days later or whenever it was that the new Pope was announced, it was the world's first American Pope. That was a pretty big historical moment. And I think this American Pope, what's his name? Current Pope Leo. Okay, so Pope Leo, he's American. And I think he's made it very clear that he does not fuck with J.D. Vance. And there was this sort of viral video moment of when J.D. Vance and his wife went to go meet the new Pope. And I think he just kind of not fully snubbed him, but he was not there. He was not there for them. And he kept it very short and brief. And you could just sense he was like, get the fuck out of my establishment. You just killed my old Pope. How very dare you? And I think he's actually been quite vocal against what J.D. Vance and the current Trump administration have been doing in all sorts of ways. So, yeah, that was a pretty big moment for the world. Everyone was also very obsessed with the whole conclave. What do they even call it? I only learned of this because of the Pope's death and also because of the film Conclave. Don't know if you've heard of this film. It came out last year. It's a film with... what's his name? It's a film with Ralph Fiennes and Stanley Tucci, and it's basically sort of like a true film about how the next Pope comes to be. And it's all like very intense, and there's long-standing tradition, and it's where there's a massive assembly of all these cardinals within like the church who sort of they vote, I guess, for who they want the new Pope to be. But it can go on for days and days and days. And then there's like this big moment where you find out once they've decided because some sort of smoke comes out of a chimney or something. Anyway, the world was gripped at this time, probably in tandem with the fact that that film had come out. So people were more clued up of like, it's the conclave, what's going to happen? So that was, yeah, very interesting times in May. And my little pop culture balance of that month for me personally is it was my first time seeing Miss Tate McRae, my queen, in concert in Manchester at the Co-op Live. Woo! A time was had, and I very much dream of going back to that day ever since. Great concert. It was my first concert in quite some time. Hadn't done concerts all that much in the last few years, but ever since moving to Manchester, I've thankfully had a lot more access to more artists and opportunities. Not so much cost-wise these days, because tickets are so expensive, but I was determined to see Miss Tate McRae when I heard she was coming, so that was a really fun concert that happened in May. So moving on to June, some significant sort of moments in culture that happened this month was the announcement of Anna Wintour leaving Vogue, which was a pretty big sort of pop culture moment there. So Anna Wintour was the editor-in-chief of American Vogue magazine for 37 years. Crikey, that is a long, long reign, isn't it? And obviously most people will absolutely know who Anna Wintour is. You just Google a picture of her and you'd immediately know who she is. She's just got one of those like iconic looks, like she's just very recognisable. She has a reputation of being quite cutthroat, shall we say, very stern, very, very serious British woman. And of course the famous film The Devil Wears Prada is like, I think, based off of her, allegedly. By the way, oh my God, next year, The Devil Wears Prada 2 film. I can't express my excitement for that sequel. The teaser trailer that we got for that earlier this year with Meryl Streep and Anne Hathaway. Oh my God. I think that's going to be like cinema event of the year next year, and I'm deeply excited. But yeah, Miss Anna Wintour, she stepped down. How old is Anna Wintour? This is probably just like her retirement, I assume, because she is sort of an older lady. Let's have a look here. Anna Wintour. Very posh, isn't she, Anna Wintour? Always with her glasses on. She's like really seen without them. Oh, she's 76 years old. Oh my God, fair play. Yeah, I mean, fair. She's been going for a while, so definitely time to pass on the reins to someone else. So that was a pretty significant development happening over in America, alongside actually something that did also happen politically in America in June, was the majority of the country took place in very large protests. They called it the No Kings protest. And I have to say that was quite reassuring to see, because I always felt like for many months, as all the drama and political stuff was happening in America, I felt like as a nation, as a country, as a globe, it felt like we were losing hope. It just felt like there was no fight back. And I was just so deeply confused about that at the time, because the previous presidency, when Trump had taken office in 2016, there was outrage, of course, of him becoming the president, and there was marches and protests, and it was so much more significant. And then, unfortunately, I think round 2 of Trump obviously brought and has brought a very different dictatorship approach from him this time, in that he's being really quite savage, like all these awful deportations, the ICE agents, all this awful stuff we've been seeing. People getting kidnapped off the streets, threatening the universities and the colleges, silencing the media. Like, there's obviously been probably a real fear, I can imagine, in America. I mean, I personally have felt it even from over here. I'm making the choice not to go to America right now whilst he's in power, because there's been awful stories of his border patrol, like deporting and arresting citizens of like Europe just because they had opinions and views against Donald Trump on their personal social media. And literally just this last week, they've started to announce that Trump's going to introduce social media checks now into border patrol checks, which is that's criminal. What do you mean you just get to take people's phones and check their personal social media for their views to determine whether you have tweeted something nasty about Trump? Like, I'm sorry, we all do. We all hate him. Everyone shares memes and all sorts of things. I certainly do. And now he's trying to, like, banish all of us. So yeah, it's like I've made my choice not to be stepping foot near America in these next few years, very sadly, because I miss it dearly. I miss New York very much. But yeah, I mean, I can see why people have been a little quieter on the protest front because of all the crazy stuff he's doing. But I felt like a bit of hope was invigorated in June when they had all these protests, because it was like, oh, at last, like they're finally just doing something. They're finally standing up to that complete coward. And there needs to be more of it. Like, it has to continue for the next, 3 years while he's in power. So yeah, June marked the fight back in the summer. And another person who tried to fight back to some allegations against him, which brings us to July, was the disgraced P. Diddy. Oh, this was quite a moment, actually, in sort of world events, pop culture. I always find sort of court trials and all these things quite interesting. Anyone who even enjoys watching like a true crime documentary may have seen the most recent series on Netflix that was, I think, released in this last week, which was the P. Diddy documentary series that was like executive produced by 50 Cent. It's called Sean Combs' The Reckoning. And it's just, I mean, and this man is a bad man. Diddy is a bad man, but alas, he received his verdict of his trial in July. As the world watched on, to most of our frustration, he pretty much got a slap on the wrist. He only got given 4 years and 2 months of a prison sentence, and he got acquitted for the majority of the charges that were against him. So he had some very serious charges against him, like sex trafficking and racketeering charges. What he should have had brought against him was his horrendous domestic abuse charges of what he did to all those poor women, in particular the singer Cassie, who he was in a long-term relationship with. Oh God, I never forget seeing that really sad video. It all kind of transpired as the year went on, but it stemmed mainly from this lawsuit that this Cassie singer had made against him for being abusive, and then a video got leaked of a time in a hotel, I think in New York maybe, or LA, where Diddy was literally captured on video, beating her up and dragging her by the hair. So awful. But unfortunately, this big trial that he had wasn't about that. It was about other things. Anyway, long story short, in the end, he got charged with 2 counts of transporting individuals for prostitution, because the man is very strange. The whole thing about him and the baby oil, all very weird, very strange fetishes, all just kind of masked as like, oh, he's just like a bit freaky. No, this man is deranged. This man is very strange. And he's like in his 50s and he's having sex parties and orgies, and they found hundreds and hundreds of bottles of baby oil, and he's clearly trafficking women for prostitution. Like, it's just, the man is disgusting. Like, and it's actually, I think, quite shocking how he didn't get more. That documentary pissed me off because there were so many moments that you just think, he's clearly guilty. Like, all it takes is these rich, powerful men to just pay, get the best lawyers in the world, and they always get away with it. It's so frustrating. And what I found the most disappointing about that particular documentary, if you've watched it, is they had like these little interviews with some of the juror members about the case, which actually, honestly, is kind of mad that they're allowed to do that in the US. I swear that would never be allowed in the UK. How can you actually publicly talk out about your involvement in a legal criminal case? Surely you're like bound to bloody non-disclosure agreements. Anyway, I guess that's America for you. Yeah, there was like this one guy who was a juror, and they were talking about the Cassie thing because Cassie was obviously a witness in this big trial. And the way that he basically was just dismissing her as a witness, saying, oh yeah, but the thing is, you know, she can't have it both ways, because whilst she says that he was abusing her, she was then texting him and saying she loved him. Just like this really, really infantile way of thinking, as is often the issue when it comes to women and violence and domestic violence and victims not being believed. Because in our culture, men in particular, and not just men, have got this really ingrained, is that the word? Like, they are very influenced in the way they think because of how it's ingrained in our society. Like, when the real true fact is that most people in some form of abusive, domestic, toxic relationship like that are it's like they're almost like being held kidnapped, is the real truth. Like, it's not just as simple as going, oh, well, that person abused me, therefore I'll just cut off all contact, all done. Like, it's a really just black and white way of thinking, you know? It's not that simple. People are coerced. That's like what coercive behaviour is. And I think it was very clear, and most people with a bit of common sense can understand that somebody like Cassie, who is like back and forth with her abuser, is like, that's kind of how it goes. They get lured in because they're being coerced. And it's just, I can't believe we're in 2025 and people still can't really grasp that way of thinking. Instead, they just go, oh yeah, but she said she loved him, so it must be that she loves him. He can't be a bad man. And that drove me mad hearing that in that documentary. I was like, and that's precisely why he got away with so little. And then, like, even the whole thing of invalidating a woman. There was this other juror they interviewed, and actually she was a woman, which shocked me that she had this view. But she was talking about this other witness that came to the stand, who was somebody that used to work with P. Diddy. Her name was Capricorn Clark. And she got very emotional in her testimony, which is probably very understandable considering what she's probably been through, having to work for someone like that. And because she was very emotional at the stand and delivering her testimony, this juror was almost criticising that as like a weakness of like, oh, well, the thing is, you know, she was quite emotional and that could mean that maybe she is getting some of her testimony wrong. She might be messing up memories. And I just thought, oh my God, like, how can you think like that? Like, God forbid a woman has an emotion in her. That doesn't mean that she's just making the entire thing up. Like, bloody hell. So, yeah, that trial was crazy, along with the documentary about it. Like, I would thoroughly recommend watching it. It's a very interesting watch. So, yeah, shit was going down in July, and that was a very big newsworthy moment that went on. In more positive news, another thing that happened in July in the world of sports, actually, I haven't mentioned much about sports this year, but we had the triumphant Lionesses winning the Euros. Now, you might remember from my last episode, I did a whole segment on the rise of women's sport, which I think has been amazing in the last few years. Make sure you go listen to that episode. and I was locked to that screen throughout the summer. The Euros is a very big football competition. It was a very momentous moment for the Wales women's football team because it was their first time making it to the Euros or a major tournament like that. So I was loving life watching that as a Welsh supporter. And then obviously the Lionesses, the England women's team, made it to the final. It was a very dramatic penalty shootout. It was crazy. And that was just a really wholesome moment in that summer because shortly after they won, they had this like amazing victory parade throughout London, going down the Mall, past Buckingham Palace. And it was so beautiful to see so many young girls and families and everyone just out to support. Everyone's waving the England flags and the British flags. And it was just like, yes, seeing women win at something anyway is always a great feeling, especially against the backdrop of all the awful things that have been going on throughout the year. That was a peak moment, and it was summer, the vibes were high, the sun was sunning, the weather was great. And I remember that feeling like an exciting time. I also took myself a little trip away in July for my birthday to Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands. I'd never been there before. That was a nice, blissful week of just relaxing, reading, sunbathing. Oh, how I wish I was there right now in the depths of winter. I haven't been for like a really nice, long, sunny holiday since then. So, oh, girl, we will be aiming for that in the new year, let me tell you. So that was July. In August, I don't actually have that much significant stuff happening in August here. The only thing that I spotted, I think it was on a BuzzFeed article, that I thought, oh my God, I simply have to make a comment on this because I thought this at the time, was in the world of TV, the iconic Miss Carrie Bradshaw, any Sex and the City lovers out there. I mean, what an iconic programme that is forever. I love Sex and the City, love that whole franchise. And in the last few years, they did like a reboot and they renamed it and they called it And Just Like That. And very sadly, it was flop Tina Central. It was so disappointing, I think, for Sex and the City fans the world over. Samantha Jones, Miss Kim Cattrall, decided not to come back. It was a whole drama because, you know, there's a feud there between her and Sarah Jessica Parker. I won't get into it. And basically, this damn series just went from flop to flop. And so this August, it was the time that they actually announced that that was being cancelled. Oh, so that was it was kind of a sad moment, but very predictable that that was going to happen at some point because they really, very sadly, were ruining that legacy. It was like very perplexing how they could have got it so wrong because it had so much of the original cast, the original writers, original like creator, Michael Patrick King, but they just like, they changed it too much. They went a little bit, dare I say, wokeified. And like, I know I don't like to use that word too much because people weaponize that, but like, they just tried too hard to overcorrect. Like maybe things from the past series that aren't exactly politically correct now. But they just should never have done that because it was of the times and people understood that. And at the end of the day, Sex and the City is about the characters, the female friendships, and yes, some of the, you know, the sex storylines and the comedy within it. And it's just like all of that was missing. And so that was, you know, a bit of a sad departure to the TV world. There is rumours swirling that they will likely come back another point in time, do another film, who knows. I feel like the Sex and the City franchise is the franchise that will never truly die, even though they say it does. So maybe they just need a little break, maybe, because it felt like a very sad ending. It was like, it was trying, and it tried to get better, and I felt like there was a bit of momentum there where they could have kept it going and turned it around, but it all happened very abruptly. It was like, oh, we've just done 3 seasons of that, and now it's just ending. And they clearly got cancelled. They tried to make out that it was a choice, and that this is the natural time to bring it to a close. No, bitch, that did not happen. The network said, sorry girls, you gotta go. And then everything got rushed because they obviously weren't prepared for that cancellation. And then nothing got really solved in terms of storylines. And it was like, oh, well, that was a bit of a disappointing ending. So that's what we saw in August. Moving on to September, I think the most significant world event that I have noted here that happened was, very sadly, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Now, that was a very big moment in culture. Just the tension of the world the temperature was very high at this time. I think, sadly, it was probably inevitable, and it was something like this was a long time coming. Considering we've just had, from January now up until September, we'd been going through months of turmoil in terms of American politics, global politics, mass division, like major division and tension amongst humans in general between political sides, left side, right side. And I mean, America is a greatly divided country anyway, even prior to Trump. And you throw in there the mixture of the gun access that they have over there, it probably wasn't a huge surprise that an assassination took place. Of course, we saw in the run-up to Trump becoming president that even someone nearly assassinated him before he managed to win the presidency. So there's a pretty... assassinations of people has a deep history in America. So it's not really a shock, but obviously seeing the assassination broadcast, it was captured on video. Of course, it was all over the internet. That was a very deep, dark, brutal moment. And look, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm mourning or grieving over Charlie Kirk, because I'm absolutely not. I think the man was an awful man. He was one of these really radical figures. He was very much like in the same category of like an Andrew Tate, like one of these very famous figures that had become very prominent in the last few years because of the extreme views. And it was all about the shock factor with Charlie Kirk. He was a complete and utter racist. He was a misogynist, like a very deep evangelical Christian. Like he was just a bad man. Like he used to spout things that were just inconceivable. You'd think the type of views that he held, that no one would think those things anymore, but he did, and he very proudly displayed them. And his entire job was that. Like, he used to basically go around making speeches and having debates, and that's where he ended up getting assassinated, was at a university campus, holding a live debate, debating students. And it's very ironic and strange that the second he died and got shot, he I think his last words were, well, gun violence. Or what was, somebody asked? It was honestly the most dystopian thing I've ever seen. So a student, let me just find it. So a student was asking him, do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years? Oh my God, talk about ironic. And Kirk's last words before being shot were his reply, which was, counting or not counting gang violence, ? And then boom, he got basically shot in the neck. And of course it was an immediate death. And it's just oh my God, that was a really dark moment for obviously America, but I think just the world. It was just the reminder of wow, the world really is so deeply divided. And I think there was a fear in people of oh God, who's next? What's going to happen next, And of course, because Trump's the one in charge of everything in America, and in a normal world, a leader, a president of a country would come at this in a very calm nature. You would reassure the nation that this is a sad time and we should mourn and let's all heal together. No, as usual, this man continued to ramp up the narrative of it was the leftists, it was these radical Democrats who caused this, just further fueling the fire. Just really disgusting. So, yeah, that was a pretty dark time, the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That was in September. Moving on to October, we saw... I mean, this is actually kind of comical. October was the heist at the Louvre. The Louvre, is that how you say it? That was meme central. That went very big on the TikTok. Everyone was talking about it. These very savvy criminals. The Louvre is a very famous, iconic institute in France. Well, it's a very iconic museum, and it holds the iconic Mona Lisa picture, right? But it also happened to have millions and millions of dollars of jewels, very rare, famous jewels, And so a very quite impressive, which is I think why this went so viral and so global. There was 4 thieves, and they basically disguised themselves with just sometimes you see those trucks that have lifts on them, where maybe someone's going up on a lift to fix a lamppost or something, or install a wiring or something, So they just had one of these lorry lift things, and they just very casually lifted themselves into this gallery thing with all the jewels. Happened all very quickly. and they came away with like the French crown jewels that were worth over $100 million. Like, just wild. And I think as of recording to this day on the 14th of December, they still haven't like recovered any of the jewels. I don't know that they've actually convicted or found out who did it either. Or maybe they've arrested them actually. I think I might be lying. Let me have a look here. Oh, all 4 suspected members of the motorbike-mounted crew have been arrested, but the missing jewels, valued at about $102 million, have not been recovered. So that was a pretty crazy moment that happened in the world. Everyone was obviously making all sorts of memes and videos about it, like, how did they do it so fast in 4 minutes or something crazy, you know? So yeah, that happened in October. November brought us Wicked 2, the film, the highly anticipated part 2 of the global phenomenon. Oh my god, Miss Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo took the world by storm the year previous when Wicked Part 1 came out, based on the very famous musical Wicked, if you've ever seen it. They made it into a film, a part 1 and a part 2. I think Cynthia and Ariana kind of captivated the world on part 1, mainly with their press run that they did. Obviously, they are fantastic in the film and they were brilliant as Elphaba and Glinda. I love Wicked, the musical. The songs are great. I sobbed my eyes out multiple times in the first part. But they went very, very viral when they were doing all their press interviews leading up to the release. And there's so many iconic memes and moments that came from that. So Wicked 2 was very, very anticipated. Fortunately, did not deliver quite as well as part 1. Still up for debate, to be honest. I think people are being a little bit harsh. I think if you've truly seen Wicked the play, or the theatre production, and you understand the actual story, you know that part 2 is never going to be as jovial and as exciting as part 1 just because of how the story goes. It's a lot like of a darker turn, you know, but it was still a really good film. I still really enjoyed it. It didn't quite have the same impact for me as part 1, but the world was chit-chatting about that release in November, that's for sure. So that was November. And then December, well, we're kind of only halfway through December, so there's not really a mass amount to report. I mean, obviously, unfortunately, today, probably the most significant world event, I would argue, that has happened this December is going to be today's Bondi Beach shooting, which is very, very heartbreaking. But that's obviously, you know, a very new, fresh and developing event. So who knows what on earth could happen in the next like 15 days or so that we've got left of this year. But if I was to end us out on a more sort of positive pop culture sort of moment that I did make note of in December, one of my personal favourites was the Zara Larsson concert viral videos. Now, you may be familiar, you may not. Zara Larsson is a pop singer. She's from Sweden. She's been going for a good few years. And she does this thing at a concert with one of her songs called Lush Life, which is arguably like one of her most famous songs. And there's a little viral TikTok dance for it. And she does this thing every night where she like brings on a fan on stage. And there was this one particular fan called Julia who like broke the internet because she just absolutely killed this dance. And like, sometimes, you know, you bring on a fan on stage, they're a little bit nervous and clunky and they kind of do the dance. But this Julia girl, she was like locked in. And it was just one of these like really amazing internet moments where she just captivated the world by storm and everyone was talking about Julia. It's like, Julia, slay! And obviously Zara Larsson in the moment as she's reacting on stage is like, yes, Julia! And that brought me so much joy. I watched that video, I don't know how many times, and it's basically taken on a life of its own ever since, because she's been continuing her shows throughout December, and each night she keeps on having these new fans, and all these fans are talented. They can dance. I think the latest one was last night, was at the New York Z100 Christmas Ball, whatever they call it. And this gal now called Stephanie, who I think is a professional dancer, just absolutely slayed it on the stage. And now everyone's talking about her. She may have surpassed Julia, no offence. But yeah, that's been a fun little light moment that I've been following throughout December. So big up Zara Larsson on that one. And there we go. So that brings us to the end of our little 2025 recap of all the significant things that happened in the world. If I was just to give you a little personal share of some of my personal highlights of my year, I would say obviously creating this podcast has been a complete joy. It was a long time in the making and took me a long time to sort of make the leap to come and just do it. I'm genuinely so proud of what I've created so far, considering I'm just a bit of an amateur. I'm a one-woman show, like I said, it's just me and my little house and my mic. Like, I'm genuinely really chuffed with what I've created. I feel really proud of just all the different content that I've spoken about. Like, I feel like I'm settling in nicely to being a Little Miss podcast host, and I've genuinely enjoyed it. And whilst we may not have much numbers behind us right now, like, I feel like I'm putting out good quality stuff, and I really hope that that sort of reaps rewards in time to come when hopefully more people find this podcast. So that has probably been my proudest achievement of this year. And alongside that, I will say I was very, very chuffed and glad to have also started a new job on the side. Albeit corporate life job, corporate girly is not really my dreams and hopes. I was definitely struggling. Most of this year, I was struggle bus. I was really having not a fun time in my last job. And to be honest, I'm sure there's a lot of people that can probably relate to this who all just work like normal time jobs, more so in the UK. I just know a lot of people that have all been in a similar situation of struggling to find jobs this year. A lot of companies making people redundant. There's been a lot of economic woes, I would say, in the UK in the last few years since the pandemic and Brexit. And the economy is just not really growing very well. And we're struggling out here. And so a lot of companies have sadly been making a lot of jobs redundant. It was a similar thing happening in my old job. I've seen it happen to other friends in their jobs. And it took me obviously an entire year to find a new job. And so it was just kind of depressing times in work life, and I was really struggling a bit mentally with that. And I was just pushing and pushing, trying to just get out of that environment, find something new. And whilst, I'm still not exactly working in a type of role that I foresee for the rest of my life, it was a change. And that was just, I can't express how big of an achievement that felt when I finally secured a job. It was oh my God, we've really been going through it, trying to achieve this, and we finally did it. So that was definitely a significant highlight for me for 2025, just being able to find a new job, quite frankly. And it did happen to coincide, not that it was planned, but it happened to coincide with the launch of my podcast too. So I was okay, girlies, there's a lot going on here. Career-wise, there's a lot of changes. So, yeah, that was honestly probably the most significant thing that I think happened in my year. I've just really been kind of working on my sort of career path, if you like, and myself and my interests. I have been going through a bit of a weight loss journey throughout that, which I am very much going to save that for a future episode for the new year. And speaking of the new year and future episodes, we'll go into just maybe some little goals now that I have for the future. And just let me know in the comments, obviously, if you've got any future goals. Have you been having a think towards this time of year about reflections and what you'd like to do next year? Do you believe in New Year's resolutions, or do you not give a shit? Let me know in the comments. But for me, my focus continues on a weight loss journey for myself, which is always the goal, to just feel a bit healthier and happier within my body. I would like to continue learning my new job that I'm in right now and get a bit better and sort of settle into that new job. I would like to find a little bit of a better community of friends and people up in Manchester. That's a big goal of mine, particularly maybe in the creative world as well. If you are a creative girly in the Manchester area, please send me a message and let me know. Would love to connect. I just want to find a good gang of people that are nearby, that share similar interests, and we can just collaborate and enjoy life together. That would be a really cool thing to achieve next year. And of course, I would hope that may bring us some more connections and maybe some more guests to the podcast next year. I did mention that last week, that I really want to try and get some more guests on here. I think that would be exciting to have lots of different viewpoints and conversations. So if you have listened to this and you may be interested in being a guest, or maybe you know me, maybe you have some fun topics of conversation you could think of, then don't hesitate to drop me a message or say something in the comments. And then one thing that I may have to start doing next year, in fact I really do need to, because I've been avoiding it like the plague, is I think 2026 may be the start of a dating journey for me. She's a single Pringle, and I have been for far too long in this lifetime. And I'm slightly rejecting some men, and I just keep thinking, but they're all awful. But I know that's not true because hashtag not all men. But just it's the thought of dating apps and all the rest of it. We all know how that goes. But I've been putting it off for far too long now. And a lot of that has coincided with like my weight loss journey. And I'll get into that whole spiel when I do that episode later down the line, because that's a lot to unpack right now. But I hope to have some fun updates maybe next time, maybe this time next year. Maybe she'll have a boyfriend, who knows? So there we go. Those are my general thoughts and goals and things for the future that I'm sort of aiming at. I don't like to do like set deadlines and feel pressure to do that stuff. I just think it's good to have something to aim for, you know? So there we go. On that note, the season finale. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week. Thank you if you've listened to today's episode. And as usual, please do make sure to drop it a like, follow the pages if you don't already. Please subscribe if you're on the YouTube channel or follow on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Chat to me in the comments. Please engage. Please share anything you can do to spread the message of the Weekly Wigs. That'll be fantastic. So without further ado, Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you all. And I will see you bright and fresh in the year 2026. Woo! Okay, here we go, girlies. Let's get it. Let's get this new year. Let's come back revived and we're going to conquer the world. Okay. Goodbye, my friends, and see you soon. Woo!